Hello everyone and welcome to Cinderful Gaming. In today's video we're going to look at getting started with the fesh-eater courts in Age of Sigmar Warcry using the Grymwatch warband from Warhammer Underworlds as a starting point to build up a full functional 1000 point warband. The Grymwatch are a fesh-eater courts warband whose members hail from a ruined kingdom laying to the north of the Beastgrave. They are degenerate ghouls who suffer from grand delusions just like all members of the fesh-eater courts. They ride out at the command of the degenerate beast whom they perceive to be the heroic Duke Crackmarrow. Hailing from a blasted and ruined kingdom far to the north, the Grymwatch have come questing to slay the monstrous entity that they believe lurks at Beastgrave's heart. After all, they can't risk letting their terrible creature threaten the crops or menace their peasant folk. Now, slavering, grunting and snarling, the ghouls of the Grymwatch scramble through the tunnels, honourable hunters in search of their monstrous prey. Today's video is sponsored by Gap Games, a fantastic miniature wargaming store in Queensland, Australia. They stock a wide variety of miniature wargames from all things Games Workshop to some of my personal favourites, Conquest, The Last Argument of Kings, and all things Modifius wargames as well. Use our affiliate code in the link below to help support both this fantastic store and the channel as well. And so, leading our warband is Duke Crackmarrow himself. This model is a pretty decent fighter, 2-inch range, which is really nice. This means your model can sort of play around with how it's fighting against enemies, not having to go within an inch of some enemies that only have an inch range attacks themselves. It means that they have to move attack just when they're barely in contact with you, or you don't have to. You've also got 4 attacks at strength 4 with 2-4 on the damage, a nice amount of attacks, albeit relatively low for a hero class character to have on their damage. 4 attacks is a nice number. You've got 20 health as well and a defense of 3, which is relatively low for a hero, but still fairly solid nonetheless for the points cost. Now, when we're looking into fesh-eater courts, we've got a bunch of different abilities that are going to apply to a large variety of different models. You've got things like Hungry Talons for until the end of the battle round. Each time an enemy fighter within 6 inches of this fighter makes a disengage, you can allocate some damage to them, which is really nice. But the big one here is your Royal Decree. This is the main ability that you get for having Duke Crackmarrow on the table. You get to pick a visible friendly fighter with both the Grymwatch rune mark and the minion rune mark within 3 inch, and they get to make a bonus attack. This is really cool for a double. Bonus attacks on a double with, very little restrictions, especially since there are going to be so many members of the Grymwatch. It's a rather large Warhammer Underworlds warband. It's really nice. You've got some other abilities as well that you're going to have access to that are more of the generic fesh-eater courts hero abilities. Victory Feast means a fighter can only use the ability if an enemy fighter has been taken down. Now you remove a number of damage points allocated to the friendly fighter within 6 inch up to half the value of the ability, and if this fighter has the frenzied rune mark as well, you do get to add 4 to the value of its ability to a maximum of 7. However, we don't have the frenzied rune mark on Duke Crackmarrow, but worth noting, if you do bring someone in, that's how the ability would work. And then, of course, we've also got the Royal Hunt. There's another main ability of the fesh-eater courts, a quad, where you just add 1 to the attacks and damage a friendly fighter's melee weapon for each visible friendly fighter within 3. So this can really sort of power up when you have multiple of your fesh-eater courts fighters next to each other. Next we have Gristlewield Greatsword. Now the Greatsword is totally just a giant bone the model is wielding, but 2 attacks, strength 4, 2-4 on the damage, nothing too great to write home about. The model is relatively cheap though, 85 points. You got that minion rune mark and the Grymwatch. This is going to work nicely with some of the abilities to get extra attacks out of it with your Duke Crackmarrow, which is really cool. Now, other than that, there isn't too much to write home about. You do have some other generic sort of minion abilities you're going to have access to. Thanks to this model just being a fesh-eater courts model. Scrambling Hordes, first of all, is one of them, and this allows you to pick a visible friendly fighter within 6 inch that has the fesh-eater courts rune mark and the minion, and you can activate this fighter immediately after this fighter's activation ends, so sort of tagging on your other friendly minions near this one, which is really cool. Your fighters generally aren't that great, your minions, so having multiple of them being able to attack is really cool. And then you've even got the ability to use other doubles to get Crackmarrow to make some of these models attacks again, can really up the damage potential of a relatively inferior model in some cases. Next is Master Talon, another one of your generic minion ghouls. 4 attacks at strength 3 with 1-3 on the damage. I actually do like this one a bit better than Gristlewield. When you're you know, not really putting too much into your attacks, having more of them is just generally the way to go. So 4 attacks at strength 3 is always generally better than 2 attacks at strength 4. You're going to be swinging for those crits to get more of them. And then you've just got your generic stats, as you would expect. Defense 3, 10 wounds, and your other abilities that we've already talked about with Gristlewell Greatsword. And then again, we've got the Royal Butcher. Now this is another 2 attack model at strength 4, so we are getting some higher strength in there when we really do need it. Once again, just you're probably going to want to get more attacks in, but this one is relatively cheaper than some of the others we've talked about already. 1-4 on the damage is nice, a big spiky sort of damage, but with 2 attacks, you're unlikely to get that spike hitting too much. The Duke's Harriers are next, and these are a more interesting model for the Warband. 4 attacks at strength 3, 1-3 on the damage again, but the big thing here is the 10-inch movement. Yes, they only have defense 2 and 8 for their health, so there's nothing too major there, but having a model that can sort of move around with fly is really good. The only downside here is we have the Beast rune marks. This means while we can go claim objectives, we can't carry any treasure. We then have the Knight's Herald, another one of our ghoul minions. 3 attacks, strength 3, 1-3 on the damage, sort of a midway point of the other fighters we've already talked about. Other than that, it is the same generic defensive stats of 3 for its defense and 10 for its health. And lastly, we have Valry the Tracker. Now this is the cheapest of all the ghouls we're going to get. 2 attacks at strength 3, 1-4 on the damage. This is by far the weakest of the fighters. You know, we're getting that nice high crit damage value, but we do only have 2 attacks, so it's unlikely that we make those sort of spiking rolls. But when we do, this fighter can really punch above its weight. Now where to go next? And the first thing I'm going to look at is High Falconer Felgrin. I really like this model. It does have a really cool ability that's accessed much cheaper than some of the other options that have the same hero ability. The first of these is going to be its sort of attacks wise. You've got a range attack in there, which is nice. It's only 1-2 on the damage, but having a little bit of range in a warband that generally doesn't have it is cool. And you've got 3 attacks at strength 4 with 2-4 on the damage. 18 health, defense 3, nothing too great there. You're only 160 points though for a character like Duke Crackmarrow. It is fairly cheap. Now the ability you're going to get access to with High Falconer Felgrin, thanks to all these rune marks, is the Winds of Shade, where a fighter can own this ability if they're not within 3 inches of enemy fighters. You pick a visible friendly fighter that has a wounds characteristic of 12 or less within 3 inches of this fighter, remove that fighter and this fighter from the battlefield and immediately set them up on the battlefield more than 5 inches from all enemy fighters, and hold it within 3 inches of each other. This is really cool. You know, the fact that Duke's Harriers are going to be probably the fastest model we have, having this being able to transport some of our minions around the table, or even Duke Crackmarrow as well, is going to be really good, and we get this really cheap accessed ability. Now he does also have Victory Feast, which is the same ability we talked about already with Duke Crackmarrow. And we've also got his own other special ability, which is Ice Shred. We pick a visible enemy fighter that was allocated damage points to this activation by any of this fighter's missile attack actions, and we give that target a gripe token. The target cannot score critical hits for the rest of the battle round while they have that token, and if any damage points allocated to a fighter with a gripe token would be removed, remove the gripe token instead. This cannot be more than 1 enemy fighter with a friendly gripe token on the battlefield at once. This is pretty cool. Now, just a note, if anyone reading into these abilities, you can have this ability on another one of the fighters. However, because that fighter doesn't have a missile attack, the gripe token won't be able to be used. So it might seem like it can, but once you start reading the ability, it obviously can't. And the last thing we're going to look at to add is a crit player. This is going to give us some real bulk and punch to the warband. Now, first of all, we've got defense 4, 28 health, but also a 10-inch flying move, which is really nice. We then have 4 attacks at strength 4 with 2-4 on the damage. This is, you know, the same profile we've got on Duke Crackmarrow, so it's definitely one of our better fighters we have in the warband. Still, nothing absolutely amazing with this. We do have the Agile rune mark on the model as well, which is going to give it its own special ability called Death Scream. Until the end of the battle round, enemy fighters within 6 inch cannot make reactions. This is really powerful because you can obviously send this in first, when you've got other fighters to activate around it, get this Death Scream off and stop your enemy being able to do things like parry and all the different reactions obviously fighters have access to in modern Warhammer Age of Sigmar Warcry. And so our warband today will consist of 2 heroes, these being Duke Crackmarrow and High Falconer Felgrin. Moving on to fighters, we then have the other members of the Grymwatch in Gristlewell, Greatsword, Master Talon, and the Royal Butcher. We then have the Duke's Harriers, Knights Herald, and Valric the Tracker, while finally finishing off with the Crypt Flayer as well. We hope that this video was helpful in getting you started with Warhammer Age of Sigmar Warcry, and that I was able to give you some ideas and inspiration to start your own force in the game. If you have any other questions at all, please comment them down below and we'll endeavour to get back to you. And while you're there, don't forget to drop a like, subscribe, and join our Discord server as well, linked in the video's description, for all our future Warhammer Age of Sigmar Warcry content.